There's something I need to show you, but you have to promise not to run away.
Miss Peregrine, delighted to meet you.
He's invisible.
Of course. We're what's known in common parlance as peculiar.
Because our abilities don't fit in the outside world.
We live in places like this.
I knew you were one of us when you were born. It's time for you to learn what you can do.
I'm just ordinary.
No, you're not.
Promise me one thing, Jake, that you will look after them all.
I promise.
There's a new world coming.
When I got the book, it's the first time I ever, opened a book and looked at it and liked it even before I read it, because I love the way Ransom Riggs had sort of concocted a story around these old photographs. You know, because I collect old photographs myself, and they tell you a story, and yet you don't know everything about it. You know, there's a sense of mystery about it, a sense of discovery, sort of a haunting poetry about a lot of photographs that I like. And when I read it, it went even deeper, because a lot of the themes of, what's real and what's fantasy, or, that feeling of feeling peculiar, or like you don't fit into your own society, or you're seeing things that aren't there, or you're going crazy. Everything that the book sort of spoke to me like, yeah, well, that's exactly the way I feel.
If I show you the rest, you have to promise not to run away.
I loved the message of the film. That came out straight away, that whole thing of learning to accept and embrace your own peculiarity, that it's okay to be weird, or it's okay to be ordinary. Even if you think you're ordinary, you're probably not. I love that whole message, because I think that's something that everybody can relate to, at some point in everybody's life. I think there is a point where you wonder if you do fit in.
Jake, come and play.
My character is kind of the eyes of the audience. He's taken out of his comfort zone, and he's totally, thrown into the deep end. And I feel like that's the kind of feeling we all have at some point. We all can kind of relate to that. And me, even just sort of growing up, becoming an actor, you kind of feel a bit out of place at times. When I was younger and I just started acting, I definitely felt like I was a fish out of water. And I think that's very apparent in this film.
51 seconds late, Fiona.
Sorry, Miss Peregrine. How many carrots do you need for supper?
Just one will do.
Peculiars have been persecuted through the ages. Hence, we live in places like this. I'm a type of peculiar called an imbrine.
Yeah, you turn into a bird.
Well, I do, yes. But that's not very useful. An imbrine's main skill is the manipulation of time. We choose a safe place, a safe day, and create a loop.
What do you mean?
Well, a loop preserves the last 24 hours. Reset the loop, and the day's yours to live in again. Reset it daily, and you can stay there forever.
It was kind of a challenge to play a woman bird, and it didn't want to be too obvious either. So I kind of tried to get inspired by the physicality of a bird of prey, kind of sharp head movements, no blinking. My long nails helped a lot as well, as if they were claws.
The way she holds herself is very bird-like. I mean, as I'm sure as you see in the film. So she does feel a lot like she's watching over us at points, and that's pretty cool, actually.
And it's not something you can say, wow, you really look like a bird. But she absolutely did. Everything that she did, the way that she eats her food, the way that she looks at someone, the hair and the makeup was exquisite.
You feel like children can see what you're up to. They can see through you. So I was like, oh my God, they're gonna see that I'm not that bossy. I need to be respected as Miss Peregrine. But actually, they were so gorgeous and wonderful and very focused. And in the moment, they have grace.
These kids have peculiarities, you can call them powers, but they're basically just kids, and that's what I liked about it. There's just a little girl who just happens to have a mouth on the back of her neck, and there's a boy with bees living inside of him, and whomever, but they're still just basic kids, and I think that was a message that was sort of interesting to me and important to me. And then, when casting the children, again, since a lot of them hadn't worked before, I just had one sort of feeling in mind with them, and that was just the word peculiar. And do they have that sort of gravity that you see in a lot of children, that sort of old soul quality where they look like they've been here before on this planet, we've all met children like that. They're not like superheroes out to save the world. They're kids with peculiarities.
What's great about fantasy and sci-fi is that it allows you to take it to the extreme and sort of break those tethers to reality and just kind of really be creative. And when you got Tim Burton at the helm of your ship, that just totally comes to life.
He's a genius. It's kind of like we should actually just film him on set. It's a movie in itself. You know, he paces a lot. He moves his hands. He's like this. He's always like there's a volcano inside, and it's wonderful. Yeah, he's like a mad conductor.
He's a very visionary person, you know? He has to see everything, which is why I had like 7 shoe fittings to make sure that the shoes were right, because that's so important to him. You know, and you see his mind work. You can almost hear the cogs turning, can't you? And he paces, and he's got this sort of amazing kinetic energy that he has to just let out all the time.
Action! Put the baby squirrel back in the tree.
What baby squirrel? That happens every day?
Like clockwork. Now, would you mind tying that rope around my waist? Right. Promise to hold on tight.
It's such a luxury, actually, to be on the real set, to not be surrounded by green screen, you know, to be in this amazing house. It looks like Tim Burton drew the house. It was a house actually in Belgium, and there was this amazing garden with this pond, those tall trees, topiaries in the shape of animals, of dinosaurs. It was such a perfect house.
A lot of the kids that we, you know, hadn't acted before, hadn't done anything before. So rather than being in a green screen constantly, I felt it was important to have them be in a place so they could feel it, so they could be there. And so that's why we used a lot of locations. That's why we tried to use as many live effects as we could as well. I mean, it's obviously, you know, a lot of effects, but it just, and the kids were all very, you know, they wanted to do our own stunts. I think they were more excited about doing, you know, diving into water or, you know, floating or lifting people than, you know, than any other aspect of it. So it was, you know, but it helped to have the reality of it there.
Come with me. There's a place I go when I want to be alone.
I would not like to do an underwater movie. I would not like to do the Poseidon Adventures. No, it's tough. You know, it's because, you know, the filmmaking process is slow anyway, but when you get into water, it's really, really slow. And to Ella and Asa, man, they had their work cut out for them on that stuff. No, that was probably the most difficult stuff to shoot.
It's tough to swim in those big boots and with a wig and with the silk dress and the waiter's shoes. I mean, I'm not the strongest swimmer anyway, so when you add all of that on top, it was a bit of a nightmare. But I got really fit in that week. We spent a whole week filming that whole underwater sequence. The sets were all real under there, and that's why it takes so long. You know, the turnarounds, getting everything in and out of the water. I mean, it's just such an ordeal.
It didn't feel like acting. It felt like some sort of weird gymnastics underwater, where you kind of have someone speaking through your ear, telling you to go somewhere. And you have no idea where that place is because, 1, you're underwater with your eyes open. 2, me and Ella both need glasses. You can't wear glasses underwater, obviously, so we were even more blind. And yeah, we spent a long time in that water tank in Pinewood, but I'd do it again, honestly.
You have the chance to do something that changes everything.
I think children like to be a bit scared. I mean, at least as a child, I wanted to be scared. I remember telling my mother, please tell me a fairy tale, but that's very scary with an awful witch. It has to end up well, though.
Kids they're like little adults, and it's best not to sort of talk down because they're, at least, you know, I remember when I felt like I was about 80 years old when I was a child. So it's not like, I think, you know, kids are pretty good at sort of finding the balance of what, you know, what's too much or not too much for them.
You can blend darkness and light very well. There's always light at the end of the tunnel in his movies.
Every movie feels like it's your first movie and last movie, so it's got that sort of feeling about it. And, you know, you kind of go like, well, you know, there's certain themes that I come back to or whatever, this sort of alienation, the sort of peculiar thing. But the thing is, once those sort of feelings, you have those, they don't really leave you, you know what I mean? So each film, you know, maybe have short-term memory loss or something, but I do feel like I find something discovering it each time.
I pretty much come to the set and say, here's where you should stand, and here's where you should enter, and here's where the camera's going to be. And often I put it together right there in the room.
We want to do this sequel. It's a continuation. We think we got a good story, and the technology is such now that we think we can provide, produce something that's good. And I was thrilled.